Greetings, viewers. Today at the MNN TV studios in Manhattan, we have special guest Jack Chanek. Jack is the author of 2 books, Kabbalah for Wiccans, Ceremonial Magic on the Pagan Path, and Tarot for Real Life. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
In your book, Tarot for Real Life, you talk about reading dynamically with holistic approaches. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So tarot reading is a skill like any other. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck. Each card is associated with a particular sort of set of themes and images. But then when you go into a tarot reading, the job that you as a tarot reader have is to take those disparate meanings and link them all together into something that makes sense, right? You make a coherent story out of them. So you might pull cards that say, you know, here's a theme about possessiveness and control, and here's a theme about conflict and competition, and here's a theme about someone who is really sort of impulsive and out of control. But those 3 cards on their own don't really tell you anything. You have to stitch them together and figure out what story they're trying to tell all together. And so if you think about, oh, well, you know, we have this root of conflict that's coming out of a sense of, you know, need to control things, and that's influencing someone to reckless and impulsive behavior. All of a sudden you get, instead of 3 separate sort of isolated themes, you get a story, you get a coherent narrative. And that's how you start to piece things together to make a full tarot reading.
Okay. Well, you talk about starting readings early. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so this is a thing I say in the book as advice for anyone who's interested in starting to read tarot. And it sounds silly to say it, but it really is true. The only way to learn tarot is by reading tarot.
Absolutely.
Right? When I first started reading tarot, I bought books and I read the books and I never picked up my cards.
Oh, okay.
And because I was afraid of getting it wrong, right? There's this fear of, you know, well, I don't want to start reading tarot until I really know what I'm doing. And the reality is, until you practice, you're not going to know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's everything. You gotta put your hours in.
It's like learning to ride a bike, right? You can read all the books in the world you want about bike riding, but until you actually get your butt in a bike seat and learn to pedal those pedals, it's not going to happen. And it's the same thing with tarot. It's a skill that you have to learn through practice.
Talk about riding a bike. You know, sometimes you fall down, and that goes to the next question. You talk about getting readings wrong. Can you talk about learning from that approach?
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect, and if we were perfect, we wouldn't need tarot to help us make our decisions. And this is, I think, an important thing to keep in mind when you're learning to read tarot, is that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to get a reading wrong, because that's a normal part of the learning process, and that's human. And even if you're very, very good at reading tarot, you'll still get things wrong sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. What inspired you to write about the Kabbalah?
So I grew up reading tarot. I started reading tarot when I was maybe 11 years old. And reading tarot and being, you know, a broke kid, I didn't have a lot of money to buy books, so a lot of what I was learning from came in the form of public domain sources that were available for free on the internet. And a lot of these sources about tarot end up coming out of sort of the end of the 19th century, at a period where tarot was really influenced by a society called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And this was a magical and occult society that existed in the United Kingdom toward the end of the 19th century. And they used tarot in combination with a lot of other magical practices that they did. And one of the really big ones was Kabbalah. So all of their writings about tarot are influenced by Kabbalah, are related to Kabbalah. And so trying to read up on tarot as a kid, I ended up learning about Kabbalah, and then through Kabbalah, I found my way into other forms of occultism and magic.
When people think about Kabbalah, they think about Judaism. How does this differ from traditional Kabbalah?
So this is a fabulous question. Jewish Kabbalah is a form of mysticism that's unique to the Jewish people. It emerges in medieval Iberia It emerges on the Iberian Peninsula at a time when the Jewish people are incredibly persecuted, and they're really ostracized from a lot of society. And what happens is, immediately upon Kabbalah coming on the scene, the Christian mystics at the time saw this new form of mysticism and went, oh, that's great, it's mine now. And so Kabbalah gets folded into Christian mysticism. And then sort of from there, it works its way into magic in Europe more broadly, and it sort of becomes a staple of European magic. But the original thing, the Jewish Kabbalah, is still around, and it's still very much its own thing. So there is a living tradition of Jewish Kabbalah, which is a body of received mysticism that helps connect the Jewish people with their God, and that is still alive and kicking. And it's just very different from the kind of magical Kabbalah that I write about in this book, which is a descendant of this sort of appropriation of Jewish Kabbalah that happened back in the 1300s. And so they, share a common root if you go back far enough, but they've grown up on their own, and they're very, very different systems. They have different sort of purposes and approaches, and a lot of the similarities between them are fairly superficial.
You associate each of the 10 facets of the Tree of Life with a different, with a pagan counterpart or practice. Can you explain this?
Yeah, so I wanted to write a book about Kabbalah that was accessible for pagans and witches. And really something that showed people who practice paganism or witchcraft that Kabbalah is interesting and that it's relevant to the kind of magic that they already do. Because you read other Kabbalah books that are out there, and most of them are very ceremonial. They're structured around this sort of Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn practice. And the result is that they're full of tables of correspondences, and they're very dry, and they might involve things like angels and archangels or Hebrew names of God. And for a lot of pagans, that doesn't feel relevant to them. That doesn't feel like what they do. So I wanted to write this book and really emphasize for every aspect of the Kabbalah, like, look, here's what it means for you as a pagan. Set aside all of the ceremonial stuff. As a pagan, as a witch, here's how this is useful for what you do.
Wow, that's amazing. You actually put everything, in a nice little tight package.
That's the goal, yeah. I like to make it easy for people.
One last question. Anything we can look forward to?
Absolutely. My third book is coming out in June of 2023. Three books, yeah. It's been a busy time.
Oh my gosh.
So that book is titled Queen of All Witcheries, a biography of the goddess, and I'm very excited about it. It looks at sort of the development of the way that we think about the goddess in modern paganism, sort of who this goddess is, what she's like, and how we came to think of her the way that we did. Jack's
books can be found at all fine bookstores or can be purchased at llewellyn.com. I wish to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. Until next time, thank you for watching Oculus Alchemy.
Thank you so much.